Welcome back to Beauty Marks Podcast. My name is Elizabeth Savion, and thank you for joining me on another episode of Beauty Marks Podcast. On this week's episode, we are talking about something very, very, very important. Can we just say money? So the whole aspect of money, I feel like is something that some people don't like talking about. I don't know if you make a budget or if you don't make a budget, or you just kind of go with the flow, or, your budget is like whenever your bank account hits zero or negative. Like, let's be real. So this whole conversation I am really excited about because it's with a special guest, Ayana Campbell Smith. This conversation, I hope it enriches your life. You take some notes because I even did it after I heard this whole podcast. So let's just get right into it. So today I have a special guest, Ayana. Thank you so much for joining me on today's conversation.
Yay, thank you for having me. So happy to be here.
Yeah. So those that don't know you, what are you passionate about? And can you share a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So, hello, everyone. My name is Ayana Campbell Smith. I am a debt-free money coach, and I work with millennial women and couples to help them get unstuck with their finances and become financially empowered so they can ditch debt, save more, and finally start winning with money. As far as my passions, I'm definitely passionate about educating and empowering women, small business owners, couples, millennials. And I'm also really passionate about art and creativity. And so my business Millennial Money Guide is kind of a sort of marriage of those two things that I really enjoy.
Yes, I love that. And why this whole conversation is even starting is because I saw that, it's the beginning of the year, right? Everyone's trying to get right either in fitness, in their lifestyle,
Yeah,
finances is a really big thing. And I feel like in the beginning of the year, that's when people start planning those things. So this whole conversation is very important because even for myself, I have seen how, not being financially well, like not having either the knowledge or also being, in debt can really wear you down, like
for sure.
mentally, emotionally, like in relationships, like in
Yeah.
marriage, like all those things. And so how did that even start about with your story about, educating others about financial freedom?
Yeah, for sure. So I was really lucky in that I grew up in a household that really placed an emphasis on personal finance education. And it really wasn't anything where my parents were like sitting me down every week and saying, okay, we're going to learn about finances this week. But it was really just me observing them through their actions of paying down debt, being on the same page when it comes to their money, using a budget. So that was one aspect of it. And I really learned the value of a dollar because when I was growing up, my mom is a freelance graphic designer, and she actually let me work with her on some of the projects that she would do, and she would pay me. And from that young age, I really learned the value of a dollar because I learned that when you work for money and when you manage money and when you save it, you can buy the things that you want. So I was saving my money to buy shoes when school would start. Like my parents, they bought me clothes, but I wanted other things. And so I would
Yeah.
save my money to buy those things. And so that experience is definitely one side of it. And as far as that sort of leading me into Millennial Money Guide, um, you know, in 2015, when I got engaged, I got married in 2016. I hadn't really thought about what it really takes to be an adult, like not living in your parents' home. Like I researched rugs for the first time when we were moving to an apartment, and I was like, rugs are so expensive. Like you
Yes.
don't know how much a rug costs until you have to buy your own rug and your parents aren't doing it for you anymore. So yeah, I think that really sort of kickstarted my education on an even deeper level, like self-educating myself about personal finance. Because I essentially had a panic attack when I realized how much it was going to cost us to be
Mm.
married and like be real adults. And so I had to have a conversation with my future husband, my now husband, to figure that out. And then I just dove headfirst into books and YouTube videos and just really came up with a plan and almost in a way put myself at ease because I had that knowledge. I'm really someone that thrives on having knowledge that makes me feel better.
Mhm.
But after I got married, we used those same things that I learned to pay down my husband's student loan debt, pay off our cars really quick. And so we're debt free. And I knew that there were plenty of other millennials that were either in my same shoes or would be or had been that needed that same knowledge that I had gained. And so I decided to do something about it. So I started Millennial Money Guide essentially on my couch. I was sitting down watching TV and I started writing all these topics that I had in my brain to talk about that I thought would be useful to share. And
Mhm.
it grew to 30 topics on my list on my phone. And I was like, okay, this isn't something that I can just sit on. And so I really was looking for sort of like a low commitment, low barrier to entry project that I could devote myself to. And so I decided to start an email newsletter list, and I put it out on social media like, hey, I'm starting this project. People started joining. And so that's really where it started. But since then, it's grown to be my Instagram, and now offering coaching services to the clients that I work with.
Yeah, no, that's crazy that it started from like your own personal story and the knowledge that you had to look for because you weren't aware,
Yeah.
even though that's such a blessing. Just want to go back to what you just said, that you were raised in a way that you were aware of, the importance of being, money, the dollar, like all those
Yeah.
things, which a lot of people in reality aren't. Most
Yeah,
of
for
this
sure.
country lives paycheck to paycheck.
Mhm.
My upbringing was very like different, like we were lacking a lot, and I
Yeah.
had to learn about finances mostly when I actually moved out. So I moved out for 2 years, and that was like when I felt exactly like you did, like you're like, what, laundry detergent costs
Yeah.
how much?
Yeah.
Bounty and like the basics
Exactly.
count is so much money. Or like you buy lettuce and then it goes bad in like a few
Yeah.
days, and you're just like, I'm spending all this stuff, and it's just so heartbreaking.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
I can relate in so many levels to that. But
Mhm.
I love how you talk about, tips, practical tips for millennials and how they can
Mhm.
implement that in their lives. So, how do you feel like, first, when it comes to financial freedom, it starts with your mindset?
Yeah, definitely. 100%. I feel like many of us, kind of going back to even what you said about you growing up in a different situation, we don't really realize how much our mindset, our experiences, and even the traumas that we experience either growing up or currently really have an impact on the way that we think about our money, how we think about earning money, keeping money, our wealth building potential. So many different things are related to your mindset. And that's why when I do work with my clients, mindset is one of the very first things that we start with. And it's something that we sort of work on throughout the entire course of any program that I'm running, because I do think that you can have the perfect budget, you can read all the books, you can watch all the YouTube videos, but if you aren't working on improving your mindset and your relationship with your money, then you're really not going to get the full benefit of the education that you're sort of like seeking for yourself. And so one of the things that I really love to do with people that I work with is to dive into limiting beliefs, which are basically things that hold us back from like achieving our full potential. And so really helping people to identify what those are and then write affirmations to help them begin to change the way they think about those things is super important too. And I've really found that within, because like I said, mindset is one of the first things we focus on like the first 2 calls that I have with clients, just doing that little bit of mindset work really sets the stage for all the success they'll have moving forward, because you just have those blockages and you have to get those out before you can truly receive the benefit of working with a coach or even doing the work on your own time.
Mm. So, like, can you break that a little bit more down when it comes to mindset? So, is it that you think that you can achieve, or like how you just said that I
Yeah.
make a budget, right? Like
Hmm.
personally, I write a budget every month, right? For like, for example, I made in December my January budget, and I'm like, okay,
Hmm.
these are all the things that I have, but how can my mindset affect me to not like, reach my financial goals and all of that? Like, can you give some practical
Yeah.
examples of that?
Yeah, I think it's as simple as like, so growing up, my mom, I'm a church girl. I know you're a church girl too.
Mhm.
So my mom, one of the things she always said was like, life and death is in the power of the tongue. And
Mhm.
so one of the things related to mindset is just the way that we speak about money or that we think about money. And so it sounds a little like crazy to some people maybe, but I truly believe that if you have negative thoughts and you have negative words about the way that you relate to your money, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy in your life. And so if you're someone who's always walking around saying like, I've tried budgeting, but I just suck at budgets. I suck at money. I'm terrible with money. I'm so dumb when it comes to money. Do you really think that you're going to be able to rise to the occasion of doing well with your money if you're consistently putting yourself down or speaking negatively about your money? So I really think that when it comes to mindset, it really is about sort of rewiring your brain to be a little bit more positive in relationship to your money, even if you don't believe it at the time. Just simply repeating those more positive things, working on getting rid of those negative thoughts and replacing them with good thoughts is one step that I truly believe really puts you on the same path or on the right path to getting on track with your money. And another example I can give too. So, kind of going back to the idea of us not realizing how our past experiences um, have impacted the way that we deal with our money. So, say you are someone who grew up with um, let's say like you grew up and you didn't have a lot of money growing up. And so when you become an adult, if you earn money, then you are afraid that you either won't have it, you won't be able to buy the things that you want because you have sort of a scarcity mindset maybe. And so that may act out, or it may play out in you always spending every cent that you earn because you're afraid that you'll be in a place where you won't have money anymore and I'm not going to be able to buy the things I want. So I need to spend it all right now while I have it. And then, have those good feelings of being able to buy things so that I don't have that negative emotion of having lack or not having the things that I want. And that's actually a really common thing that I've seen with people where, again, we don't really realize the exact root cause. And I'm not a psychologist. I'm not trying to act like
No,
I
it's
know
all
everything about
good. Mhm.
yeah, like I know everything. But I do think that it is just so interesting to, number one, look at how we speak about and think about our money, and then how those thoughts and those words play out in our reality.
Wow, that's so good. And I love how you touched on that because I think that's very true. Like when you feel like you've never had, when you do have, you feel like you need to have, like, well, now I can buy these things for myself. So like,
Mm-hmm.
let me, like treat myself for all these things. But then you end up doing the opposite because then you end up being where you didn't want to be, like
Yeah.
financially, like you end up getting
Mm-hmm.
into debt and all of that, which you grew up being in. So
Mm-hmm.
that limiting belief is so vital, and I love how
Yeah.
you touched on that because I feel like when people are also so scared of money, because I've also seen both. So like I just want to
Mm-hmm.
like ask you, I've seen people that like have a lot of money and they're scared, like so they kind of like save like a whole bunch
Yeah.
of money. They're like the
Mm-hmm.
extreme, so like they're like, I have this money, but it's like more a security thing for them, like
Mm-hmm.
they want, like they think it's going to go away, so they live in,
Yeah.
they still have that scarcity mindset, like they're still receiving money but they're
Mm-hmm.
kind of like putting it towards
Hoarding it.
them,
Yeah.
yeah, like hoarding it, of like, this is like my safety net.
Yeah.
I can't spend a dollar because then
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna go broke, and they have like $100,000, like
Yeah.
it's like an abundance that they have. However, they
Mm-hmm.
have that mindset of still lacking. So can you talk a
Yeah.
little bit about that if you have experienced or heard from that?
Yeah. No, and I was actually going to touch on that too. It definitely, there's like opposite ends of the spectrum when it comes to your mindset. So it totally, what you laid out is completely accurate too. I've seen that before where people, like you said, money for many people represents stability and security. And so by hoarding more of it or by keeping more of it, that's their means of like having almost like a security blanket of like, nothing bad can happen to me. I'm going to have all this money. But that also isn't great too, because I truly believe that money is not only meant to supply your needs like shelter, food, your wants, like, going on a vacation or whatever. But I think it's also meant to be fun. Like spending money should be fun. And when you have a healthy relationship with it and you have a good budget and you're not afraid of money and you're not afraid it's going to leave you, then you can fully open yourself up to enjoying the money that you work hard to earn. And so what good is it to have $100,000 hoarded, but you're never going to spend it? You're afraid to spend it. Like I've seen people who, when you have an emergency fund, which is basically
Mhm.
money that you set aside for a rainy day, like your car breaks down, unexpected medical expenses, whatever it might be. I've worked with clients who will have an emergency fund set aside, but when an emergency fund or emergency comes up, they're afraid to use their emergency fund.
Mm.
And I'm just like,
Yeah.
why? That's like you are being proactive. You're preparing for the time when you're going to need this. And now you're afraid to spend it. Like it doesn't really make a ton of sense, but it really is just that mindset thing of, these things that we tell ourselves and these thought patterns that we have that play out in our reality.
Yeah, because that's like both. I love how we spoke about both extremes, because it's
Mm-hmm.
not good to have one or the other, where you are
Yeah.
spending because you're scared because you've never had, or like you're spending because you think there's not going to be enough.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like having that abundance mindset, like that you have more than enough and money will like flow. I
Mm-hmm.
feel like an analogy that I heard about money is like when you're holding money, like you're not letting it flow. When that comes to even giving, a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
also, when they have money, they also feel scared to give, when in reality, like when you have your hands kind of open, like it flows like in and
Yeah.
out,
It's
like
open to receive more. Mm-hmm.
exactly open to receive more.
Mm-hmm.
So what are some tips when it comes to starting a budget or saving money?
Yeah, I'll start with the budgeting because I feel like I always say this whenever I do podcast interviews, but like budgeting and saving, those are like my two favorite things. Like I love
Hmm.
having a budget because of what it provides, and I love saving money because it just opens up so many opportunities for you. So when it comes to a budget, I think that um, many times we hear the word budget and we automatically think restriction, like we're not going to be able to go to Starbucks, we have to stop going to Target. We can't ever go on vacation anymore because I'm on a budget. I'm on lockdown.
Mm-hmm.
But I really like to help people reframe their definition of the word budget, because for me, a budget is not something restrictive. It's not a prison sentence, but it really is just a plan for how your money will be spent during a given period of time. And so when you have a budget, you're actually empowered. I think I touched on it before. You're empowered to better enjoy the money that you work hard to earn, because you have a plan for it. And then you don't have those feelings of guilt about, should I spend this money? Did I spend too much this month? That all goes away if you're following a budget and you are tracking your spending.
Mm-hmm.
And so when it comes to creating a budget, I think the very first step before you get your app out, or your Google Sheets, or your pen and paper, whatever it is that you're using, is that you really have to get clear on your starting point and what you're spending right now. Mm-hmm. Because without it, there's no way to accurately create a plan for your money if you don't know how much money you have coming in or what you actually need to spend money on. Mm-hmm. And so I always encourage people to do what I call a spending audit, where they essentially review and categorize their last 3 months of spending to see where their money is actually going. And so you can do it any way that makes sense for you. I usually do it on like a spreadsheet where I will list out all the expenses, categorize them based on like food, bills, hobbies, going out, like just whatever categories make sense for you. And then once you've done that for the 3 months, you really just take the time to analyze what it reveals about your spending, because you may find that you're spending in reality $400 a month on food, but you're only budgeting $200. And then you get to the end of the month and you're like, oh, I broke my budget on food, but you didn't budget in a way that actually aligns with the way you spend your money. And so when you actually are able to see how much money you're really spending, then you can create a realistic budget, and you can make some decisions about whether or not you want to cut back on certain areas, you want to boost certain other budget categories, and things like that. So I really think that having that starting point is vital, and you can create a budget without doing that, but I don't think it's going to be the best budget for you.
That's so important, because sometimes we want to spend $200 on food, but the reality is, like, when I've done that, I've checked of how much money I've spent on food, and sometimes I'm like, I'm so embarrassed. Like, how did I spend this much money on food? But like, what have you seen that millennials in particular spend a lot of money on?
It typically is food. And then back when we were able to go out and do stuff, it was like food and, like travel or experiences. Some people I feel like everyone has their thing that they like to buy. So for many people, it's like they really like to go clothes shopping. For other people, they really like spending money on their dogs. Like I have plenty of clients who really just spoil their dogs. I had another client who really just loved Dunkin' Donuts, and she was spending a ton of money at Dunkin' Donuts every month. So I think the other important thing to remember is that when you create a budget, you are putting yourself in the driver's seat. And so I'm never going to tell someone that they can't spend $400 at Dunkin' Donuts. But what I am going to say is, hey, you're spending $400 at Dunkin' Donuts. That's $400 that you can't spend on paying down debt, saving an emergency fund, beginning to invest for the future, or any other thing that might be more important to you. So I think that when you have a budget, the other piece of it is really getting clear on not only your starting point, but also what are your priorities and the things that you value, and how can you use your money as a tool to increase those things in your life? Because it really is just about balance. I think with anything related to money and numbers, it's about balance. And so $200 or $400 spent on Dunkin' Donuts is $400 that you can't spend elsewhere in your budget.
And how about when it comes to saving then? So like a budget is like you telling your money where pretty much it goes, and you being the driver of that. So when it comes to saving, which is, let's say someone has a lot of debt, right? So how does that start when it comes to saving?
When it comes to saving, I think it really is also about having a plan too, the same way that a budget is a plan for your money. Building savings into your budget, number one, is important. But I think that where a lot of people get tripped up is that they have sort of either really lofty or sort of like ill-defined savings goals. So they might say, it's 2021 and I want to save $5,000 this year, but that's where they stop. And then they get to the end of the year and it's like, I didn't do it. And it's because you didn't have a plan. You didn't actually sit down and do the math and figure out like how you're going to break down this goal into smaller, more manageable pieces so you can actually achieve it. And so when it comes to the question specifically of, managing savings when you have debt, I think it really is a personal decision of whether or not you want to try to do both, like paying down debt and then saving at the same time. But one of the things that I would challenge people with is that when you have your focus in too many different directions, it's hard to really make progress on anything because you're kind of splitting your time in so many different ways. And so when it comes to saving, I'll get into some tips for doing it in a second, but I think when it comes to sort of making a decision about whether or not you should be saving or investing or paying down debt, I think that at a minimum, if you're dealing with debt, you need to save an emergency fund so that you have that security net for when you do get a little bit more focused on your debt-free journey. So saving an emergency fund, number one, to start. And then from there, making a decision about what you want to do next. Do you want to split your time between, paying debt and trying to save for a large goal at the same time? Do you want to just hold off on saving for other bigger goals and just pay down the debt and then be done with that and then move on to saving? I don't think there really is a right or wrong answer, but it really is about having that budget that'll tell you what you actually are capable of, number one, and then building all of those things into it to see sort of where you land as far as how your income stacks up against all the things that you want to do.
So, do you personally recommend that people make it as like a 10% out of their, out of their salary towards their savings, like an automatic payment? Or do you feel like it just depends on the person of how much percentage, or if it's a certain like $50 or $100?
Yeah. Yes, I think it does depend largely on the person. I do think that when it comes to deciding on a percentage, like there's no harm in doing that, because the most important thing is that you're building a savings habit. Because many people, they only see savings with sort of like tunnel vision, like I'm working towards this one specific goal. Once I achieve it, I'm going to go back to just spending money on whatever. But I think that when you really align yourself with this whole sort of practice of saving as a habit, it really benefits you in the long run, because as your income increases, as you get raises at work, as you move up the corporate ladder or whatever it might be, if you're in the habit of already saving money and living below your means, you're going to be able to either save the difference or increase your savings over time, because you've already demonstrated to yourself that you're capable of living below your means. And so, yes, your lifestyle may increase a little bit as you get new opportunities and new jobs, but it doesn't have to be a thing where as you earn more money, you're then increasing your lifestyle and it still feels like you're living paycheck to paycheck every month. So I think that it is really important to get into the habit of saving. So whether it's a percentage or whether you're saving towards a specific goal, I think that it really just is a matter of breaking things down into manageable pieces and doing things little by little. So maybe if you are going the percentage route, you start with saving 5%. And once you get used to that, you challenge yourself and you move it up to 7% or 10% or whatever it might be. And eventually you'll get to the point, if it aligns with sort of what you want to do, you may get to the point where you're saving 50% of your income, you're living a comfortable life, but you still also are receiving the benefits of having, these amazing savings rates each month, because you've sort of trained yourself to live below your means. So that's one side of it. I do think that if you're working towards a specific goal, like say you were saving money for a new car or a vacation or your first house or whatever, going back to what I said before, I think it really is important to break down your goals into smaller, more manageable pieces. Yeah. So going back to the example I said before about like wanting to save $5,000 in 2020. Yeah, 2021. I forgot what year it was for a second. If you want to save $5,000 in 2021, like I said before, doing that all, just having that goal may seem a little bit daunting or impossible. But if you break it down and say, okay, how much do I need to save per month? How much do I need to save per paycheck? Then you'll find that it's either $400 per month or $200 per pay period if you get paid twice a month. So when you break it down that way, you're better able to look at things in your budget and see, can I make this work? Number one, if I can't, are there things I can move around? Can I reduce my spending in my food category or in some other category to help me actually achieve this goal? Because this is something I've identified that's important to me. And because of that, because I have a budget, because I'm in the driver's seat, I can make decisions about, where my priorities lie and move things around it to help me achieve my goal.
Yeah, because I feel like it is overwhelming when you have such a huge goal of like $10,000 and then you're like, but how is that going to work? I've done those goals too. Like, okay, this year I'm going to save X amount of money. And I find that a little bit more difficult than what you just said. Like, I really like that tip, like breaking it down to something achievable that you also can start seeing it grow, because I feel like as you
Yes.
start seeing it grow, it starts building
Motivation.
momentum. Yeah, it's like, okay, I can do this. Like I
Yeah.
saved $1,000. Like that's a big deal.
Mhm.
So what if because I know that you were living at home before you started, your journey,
Mhm.
and then, you got married and everything. So what tips do you give to someone that's at home and maybe doesn't have as many bills, right?
Yeah.
That can benefit, because, we love to treat ourselves, we love to
Mhm.
enjoy all those things. But what are tips that you have for those people that are living at home, or maybe, like when it comes to money and
Yeah.
financial tips that they can do now?
I would say take advantage of staying at home for as long as you can. Like you said, like when you're living at home, you're typically not paying rent or you're not buying all the groceries for yourself. And so I think many of us don't really realize how big of a deal that is while we're in the moment. And then we get out in the real world and we're like, oh crap, I should have really taken advantage of the fact that I was living at my mom and dad's house.
Mhm.
Um, and so what I would say is that number one, do everything that we just talked about. Start the habit of building a budget, start the habit of saving. If you have debt, start the habit or start the process of looking at what it would take to pay down the debt, because you want to take advantage of all those that period of time that you have where you don't have to worry about those other financial obligations. And
Mhm.
just speaking from experience, like when I was living at my parents' house, it was after, so between graduating from college and then getting married and moving out, I think I was at my parents' house for maybe 2 years.
Mhm.
So in that time period, I had gotten my first real job. I wasn't making a ton of money, but I was not in college anymore. So I was making more money than I would had ever been making before. And
Mhm.
so in that time period, since I didn't have any student loan debt, I took advantage of that period and I started saving for our wedding. Once we got engaged, I put money
Mhm.
aside. I started saving for our future apartment because I knew that I would want to furnish it nicely because I really like interior design, decor. So I wasn't
Uh-huh.
going to have just some like a cardboard box for a table.
Anything.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
wanted nice, affordable furniture. So I did that. And then the other big thing that I did was that I bought myself a new car, not a new car, a used car, but I
Mhm.
bought the car that I wanted that felt more aligned with like me being an adult as opposed to like still driving
Mhm.
my high school senior through
Car,
college car.
yeah.
And so I
Mhm.
bought the car. I saved a down payment for myself. I put that down. That was one of the scariest moments in my life, writing a $7,000 check for the first time ever
Ooh,
for a down payment.
yeah.
But I felt so empowered doing it. And so I bought that car and then I paid it off within a year of buying it too. And so I already
Wow.
had no car payment by the time I got married to my husband, which was great coming into our relationship.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I definitely, that's not to brag or anything, but just speaking from experience, take advantage of the fact that you're living at home. If you're working, put your money to good use while you can, because you're not always going to have that sort of benefit of living in someone else's
Mhm.
home.
Yeah, that's so true, and congrats. That's a really
Thank you.
big accomplishment. I think that, like, not having a car payment is, like, the best thing
It's
ever,
amazing.
because
I love
you
it.
don't have, like, at least that's one of the biggest payments that I feel like I have right now, is more like my
Mhm.
car, and then, like, once I pay that off though, like, I don't really have, like, a
Yeah, it frees up so
huge.
much money.
Yeah, like, it's so much more of freedom.
Mhm.
How about for couples when they are either just got married or they're married and you have to combine, like, what
Mhm.
tips do you give when talking about money, and when, like, kind of combining,
Yeah.
like, is it like when it's like yours, ours, and ours kind of
Uh-huh.
thing? Like, I'm
Yeah.
curious to know, like, your thoughts on that.
Yeah. I actually get asked about this a lot too. Um, I hate to keep saying it. I definitely think it just depends on your situation.
Mhm.
I'm a proponent of completely combining everything after you get married, because I truly believe that when you come together in a marriage, it's not just like you coming together in the relationship, but you're combining everything, your entire
Mm.
lives. And so I do think that it can be a difficult conversation to navigate, because remember what we said before, we all come to the table with different mindsets about money, experiences, traumas. And so it may be a situation where one person is super gung-ho about combining and the other person is a little bit hesitant or just completely opposed to it. So
Mhm.
you can't force the other person to see it your way. But I do think that it really is about having patience, number one, and just really understanding where the other person is coming from and
Mhm.
working on a way of compromising of how you're going to handle your money together. But even if you don't have combined finances, I do think there are things that you can do together to be on the same page when it comes to your money. So you can work on creating a budget together and assigning like who's paying for what. You can
Mhm.
have monthly or weekly budget meetings where you, or money dates as I call them, where you basically come together and you work on defining goals that you're going to work on together, how you're going to achieve them, where money should be going, what priorities might need to be shifted. I think those are all really good. But the other thing to remember is just that, like anything related to a relationship, everything that you do together is an opportunity to foster trust,
Mm.
communication, and just teamwork within your relationship. And your money is no different. So I do think that kind of coming to the table with that sort of team mentality is really important. And just knowing that if you are combining or if you are working together, for me, there's no more yours versus mine. It's definitely ours. We may have our own separate like side funds where we can treat ourselves to this and like, but we decide on those things together. Like we can give ourselves an allowance to be spent, no questions asked. But the large bulk of the other, things that we're working on together, I think should all be something that you work on as a team.
Yeah, that's so good. I mean, I'm not married yet, but I definitely feel like that's my alignment in my thinking too. Like, I
Mhm.
feel like it would be like combined incomes where it's like we're both working through our things together.
Yeah.
Money is a very sensitive topic for a lot of people. And even
Mhm.
like in my upbringing, like that was something too. So it's like, it's true. Like, you bring your own kind of mindset based on what you also learned about money and how you considered and thought about money too.
Yeah.
But I feel like that can be something that you guys can like use together to like
Mhm.
reach some really big goals, if it's like buying a house or being debt
Yeah.
free or going on a vacation, whatever it might be, like, or a business, starting a business together. Like, there's so many things that you can benefit from
Mhm.
using both of those things. So
Yeah.
I love what you shared about them. That's really
Yeah, of
good.
course.
So I hope our listeners are really taking away, like, either if you're as a single, like, at home, like, and you're not married yet, or if you are married, and kind of working through those things.
Yeah.
Um,
Another tip I can share too, related to that really quickly, is
mhm,
when it comes to money and relationships, if you are in a situation where things are uncomfortable, I always like to tell people to focus on the fun parts first. And so, just a quick little story about that. So, when my husband and I got married, we were kind of navigating this whole idea of combining money and what it would look like. And things were a little bit uncomfortable just because we both came to the table with different mindsets, different
mhm,
experiences. And so, kind of talking about focusing on the fun parts, my husband really wanted to get a new car after we got married, and he's a car guy, so he likes cars. He
mhm,
wanted a specific type of car, and I was completely fine with that. It was our money. We were combined, like, you get the car that you want, and that we can afford.
mhm,
But at the same time, there's some student loan debt that I want to take care of first. So let's focus on the fun thing that we want to do together, buying the car. And then let's look at the debt as being the thing that's stopping us from doing that. So
mm,
by looking at the debt and saying, hey, this is standing in our way. Once we take care of that, we're going to have so much fun in this new car that you're going to buy. So let's focus on doing that first, get on the same page there, and then we can go car shopping. And so just
mm,
having that simple conversation of, me being honest and open and saying that, hey, I'm not comfortable buying a car when we already have student loan debt, really helped him to see where I was coming from. And I saw where he was coming from and that he wanted a new car. And
mhm.
so we were able to focus on paying down the debt super quick. I think we did it within like a couple months after having that
Oh,
conversation.
wow.
And then the next month, we were able to go and buy the car that he wanted and then pay it off in the same way that we paid off my car. So it really is just one of those things where
Mhm,
when it does get uncomfortable, focus on the things that you want to do together that are exciting for you, and then see all the other things standing in your way almost as like an enemy or an opposition, and work towards removing those from your life as a team together.
mhm. Yeah, that's such a good perspective because it's true.
Yeah.
It's like nobody likes to talk about like, okay, we had to pay this and this and this. It's like,
Hmm.
but how about the fun stuff? What are the things that you want to achieve?
Yeah.
And you can compromise and work towards that together.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, for sure.
what other encouragement, as we're closing now, with our conversation, what encouragement do you give to those people that, maybe don't have a budget, that maybe have their own thoughts on money and all of that
Hmm.
for this new year?
Yeah, I would say that the number one tip is, or the number one piece of encouragement would be remembering that personal finance is a journey. It's not something that you're going to wake up one day and snap your fingers and automatically be like, quote unquote, good with money or have the perfect budget or have a huge savings account. Like, it's something that you have to work towards. There are going to be frustrating parts. There are going to be happy parts, but just remember that the whole entire journey is worth it, because when you are working towards becoming more financially literate, really getting on track with your money, I really think that it is just one step towards becoming the best version of yourself and gaining that confidence when it comes to managing your money. And so I would say just start. You're going to make
Mhm,
mistakes, but be okay with that. And just know that it'll all be worth it in the end, because that's not only knowledge that you can gain for yourself to benefit your own self, but also for future generations, for your family members, for your friends, everyone around you. Having financial knowledge really benefits everyone. So that's what I
mhm.
would say.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Ayana. Like, I
Of
really
course.
appreciate this conversation. I also like going back, I'm gonna like take some notes for myself
Yeah.
of things that I can apply, because finances is a very important part of our life, and no
Mhm.
matter like it's part of our everyday in 2021,
Yeah.
and it's something that will help us for the future. So thank you so much for everything. And how can people connect with you and find you like on social media?
Yeah, so I am most active on Instagram. You can find me at millennialmoney.guide. Millennial Money has two L's and two N's. I always have to say that because most of us like don't know how to spell millennial. Like I definitely didn't know how to spell it when I was creating this account. I had to
Mm,
look it up in the dictionary. But yeah,
mhm.
at millennialmoney.guide, you'll see me. It's a picture of my face with a bright green background in the background. So find me there and feel free to reach out, DM me. I'm always answering DMs, ask any questions that you have, and I would love to
Mhm.
meet you there.
Yeah, she shares a lot of good tips and just like her everyday, like even if you want coaching, like all that kind of stuff that if you want her to walk you through. And some people need that. Like I feel like some
Yeah.
people need someone to kind of like make a plan with them. And is
Mhm.
that's what you
Yeah.
also offer, right?
Yeah, I offer right now I offer a 10-week coaching program. So it's 8 calls with me and we basically walk through every aspect of your personal finances from starting with that spending audit, working on your
Mhm.
mindset, building a budget together, figuring out how much you should have for emergency fund, creating a plan for paying down debt, and then also working on saving strategies. And then we also can do like a Q&A session where you can come with any questions that you have about money. And it's basically like a discussion where we dive into those topics a little bit deeper. I provide resources. I do research to better answer the questions. So it really is one of my favorite parts of my business, being able to coach others, because I love seeing the transformation that happens when people just have someone there to hold them accountable, to hold them or to give them support, cheer them on. It really is amazing just what can happen when you have that
Mhm.
person on by your side.
Yeah, that's so true. Well, it's amazing what you're doing. And thank you so much for today's conversation. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
So I don't know why after listening to this podcast, like I was thinking about the song like money, 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 money. That was literally what I was thinking about. But thank you so much for joining me on today's podcast episode. I hope you learned something, that you took some notes, things that you're going to apply. If it's starting your savings, if it's starting a budget with your income, if it's just changing your mindset on how you see money. I think that for me has been like the limiting beliefs that I have had about what I can accomplish is, hey, like I can do this. I can do a budget and I can stick to it. Like I can do this. Like I'm not broke. I honestly don't use that word like being broke. I just say like I'm either on a budget or I'm just trying to be more mindful or hey, I can't go out, like things like that. But I feel like that's something that you do have to start changing and be more aware of when it comes to your mindset, which is something that we talked about on last week's episode. So now we are going into the second week of January, and I hope that you are continuing all the things that you have planned to do, all the things that you want to do, that your heart's desire. I've been drinking lots of water. I've been on a low carb diet and also just trying to be healthy. And then trying to organize myself. And I feel like it's been good, decluttering my house, my room, my mind, and just preparing for all the exciting things to come. So don't forget to subscribe to this podcast, follow me at Elizabeth Savvy, and I will see you guys next week.